Good morning, everyone. We are excited to present our case analysis of Netflix from both a microeconomic and a macroeconomic perspective. Before diving into the details, allow me to introduce the members of our team who have contributed to this comprehensive analysis. Firstly, me. Hi, I'm Garima Chod. I will start the presentation with an introduction to the topic, followed by an in-depth analysis of the Netflix's business evolution due to the impact of COVID-19.
Hello, thank you very much. Hi everyone, I'm Sonu Panigai. I'll present supply and demand analysis for Netflix, diving into the factors that shape Netflix pricing and availability in the market.
Hello everyone, I am Pratik Gaikwad and I'll discuss the price elasticity of demand and supply for Netflix as well as macroeconomic factors that have had a significant impact on the company.
Hello everyone, I am Kishore and I will cover the effects of factors and monetary policy on Netflix operations and shedding lights on the blameless economics factors that affects in the COVID-19.
Hi, I am Anish Vasil. I will conclude the presentation by discussing international developments and Netflix future. But first, let's hear from Redima, who will talk about how Netflix changed during COVID-19. Thank you.
Thanks, Anish. Now, Netflix. Today, we all know that it is a streaming platform, but do we know how it came into existence? A streaming giant which once started as a DVD rental service in 1997 by the company's founders Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph, who revolutionized how people consume entertainment. Netflix has its headquarters in Los Gatos, that's in California. From a small startup to an international powerhouse, Netflix has grown so much in the entertainment industry. As far as the global reach is concerned, Netflix has widespread availability and it reaches its audience in virtually every part of the world. And that's how it has become one of the most globally recognized streaming platforms. Now, as we talk about the content library, Netflix has a vast collection of content, which includes a diverse range of genres, languages, and formats. This variety ensures that there is something for everyone. Now, coming to subscribers, Netflix has seen massive growth in terms of user base, with over 230 million subscribers worldwide as of 2024, emphasizing its leadership position in the streaming industry. Now, let's discuss Netflix's business model. From its initial DVD rentals to its subscription based streaming, Netflix has done it all. Recently, Netflix has also introduced some ad supported plans as well. Now, coming to original content, Netflix has invested heavily in creating original content that's exclusive to the platform, like The Stranger Things and The Witcher. Many of its shows and movies have gotten so popular among the audience that it has made Netflix synonymous with premium entertainment. Netflix also uses various technological innovations, due to which it has been a pioneer in high quality streaming services supporting 4K, HDR, and other advanced features. Their AI driven algorithms personalize user experience by recommending content based on viewing preferences. Now, moving on to the next slide, let's discuss Netflix's business evolution due to COVID-19. As we all know, during COVID-19, everyone was stuck at home and was searching for different ways to keep themselves entertained. And Netflix has proven to be best of all. And that's the reason behind Netflix's subscriber surge. Netflix saw an explosive growth in its subscriber base during the early months of COVID-19, as people turned to streaming for entertainment during lockdowns. Over 16 million new users joined in quarter two of 2020, pushing Netflix to over 200 million subscribers. With more subscribers, Netflix seen increased streaming demand. The global lockdown significantly increased screen time, with more people turning to Netflix for entertainment. People of all age groups were using Netflix more, resulting in record breaking numbers for viewership and engagement. Content production delays. With the pandemic halting physical production on many shows and movies, Netflix had to adapt. Netflix relied more on its existing content library while pivoting to virtual productions and other creative solutions to keep subscribers engaged during the delays in new releases. Now, coming to the revenue growth. Despite production challenges, Netflix benefited financially from the increasing number of subscribers. And we can all agree how its subscription model provided a financial stability even during a global crisis and the company's ability to maintain its global reach. Then Netflix had to shift to family and kids content as during the pandemic, families were spending more time at home. So Netflix felt the need to offer more family friendly content by creating specialized content for children, helping to retain a broad audience. Now, going on to the next slide, let's discuss Netflix's strategic adaptations during COVID 19. The first one, as you can see, is innovative content release strategy. To maintain subscriber interest and excitement, Netflix introduced new releases, including global launches for major films and series. These releases attracted significant attention worldwide and kept Netflix in the cultural conversation. This strategy was especially evident with shows like The Old Guard and continued success of Money Heist. Secondly, expansion of interactive content. With audience demand for unique experiences, Netflix further developed its interactive series model, offering viewers more control over the content, which helps increase engagement. Thirdly, adapting to viewing habits. As the pandemic continued, Netflix adapted to shifting viewing habits, focusing on more mobile first content and optimizing for flexible viewing on various devices. The pandemic also saw Netflix adopting viral marketing through social media platforms, making it easier for viewers to engage with and share content. Lastly, international focus. With global travel restrictions and different markets experiencing varying levels of lockdown, Netflix accelerated its focus on international content. It increased investment in localized productions to appeal to diverse audiences, ensuring relevance and keeping subscriptions strong across different regions, due to which it started investing in Indian and Spanish production. So, in conclusion, Netflix has evolved from its 1997 founding to become a global leader with over 230 million subscribers. The COVID 19 pandemic accelerated subscriber growth due to increased streaming demand. Although content production faced delays, Netflix adapted by innovating with global releases, interactive content, and expanding into international markets. These strategic adjustments allowed Netflix to maintain its leadership position and continue growing despite all the challenges. And with that, I conclude my section of the presentation. Now I'll hand it over to Sonu, who will take you through supply and demand analysis of Netflix. Thank you for your time.
So thanks, Garima. So now let's move on. So let's discuss supply and demand analysis of Netflix during pre-COVID time. So the demand analysis. So for the first point, steady consumer demand. Before pandemic, Netflix had a consistent and predictable demand curve. Consumers valued on demand streaming over traditional cable TV. The subscription model ensured a steady revenue flow, making demand relatively inelastic. Second, gradual growth in subscribers. Netflix expanded aggressively into international markets, leading to a rise in demand. Localization strategies, example, subtitles, dubbing, regional content increased appeal in non-English speaking regions. Third, content as a key driver. High budget original productions such as Stranger Things, Narcos boosted engagement. Exclusive licensing deals for popular movies and TV shows further enhanced demand. Fourth, demand curve representation. The demand curve before pandemic gradually shifted rightward. Increase in demand as Netflix grew its library and expanded globally. Price sensitivity. While minor price hikes occurred, demand remained stable due to high perceived value. Now, on to the supply analysis for pre-COVID. First point, strong supply of content before pandemic. Netflix had a robust content pipeline balancing original productions, licensed content, consistent content releases, and supply curve was relatively elastic. Netflix could scale content production to match demand. Second, flexible pricing and its impact on content supply. Netflix tiered pricing structure allowed users to choose affordable plans, ensuring steady revenue. More subscriptions is equal to more investment in content production. Third, global content expansion, producing for a worldwide audience. Netflix expanded production hubs in Europe, Asia, and Latin America to diversify content. Now, why did Netflix expand its production hub in different parts of the world? For increased demand for localized content, reduced reliance on Hollywood production, more cost effective content creation. Fourth, content licensing and third party partnerships. Pre-COVID, Netflix still relied on licensed content for major studios. Partnership with Hollywood and TV networks provided access to popular titles. However, studios like Disney and Warner Bros. Started launching their own streaming services, leading Netflix to increase original production. Fifth, scalable streaming infrastructure and content delivery. Netflix invested in global content delivery networks to ensure seamless streaming, optimized content distribution across different bandwidths to accommodate global users. Sixth, conclusion, Netflix strong supply model pre-COVID. Balanced supply of original and licensed content, flexible pricing fuel demand and content expansion, global production strategy. Now let's move to pre-COVID equilibrium price and quantity. What is equilibrium price and quantity? In economics, equilibrium price is the price at which the quantity of a product supplied matches the quantity demanded. The equilibrium price was maintained steadily due to a balance between content supply and subscriber demanded during pre-pandemic. The equilibrium quantity represents the number of active subscribers at a given price. Second, stable subscription pricing. Unlike traditional TV, where prices are affected by advertising and cable provider fees, Netflix had direct control over its subscription pricing, kept pricing affordable to retain users while slowly increasing revenue per subscriber. Third, steady growth in subscriber. Demand for Netflix was steadily rising before pandemic due to original hit shows, international expansions. Netflix balances content supply with its growing demand to avoid sudden price hikes. Fourth, balance supply and demand. Regular content update, price elastic consideration. Netflix understood that raising price too quickly could cause subscriber churn. Instead, it focused on increasing value rather than price increasing. Prices were adjusted by region. Fifth, graph representation, supply and demand curve pre-pandemic. The graph titled Netflix supply and demand curve visually represents the market equilibrium for Netflix subscription before the pandemic. Demand curve D1, the blue line slope downward from left to right, illustrating that as the price decreases, the quantity demand increases. This reflects typical consumer behavior. Supply curve. The red line slope upward from left to right, indicating that as the price increases, Netflix is willing to supply more subscriptions. Equilibrium point. The intersection of the supply and demand curve is marked by a black dot at coordinates 200 to 12.75. This point signifies that at a price of $12.75, the quantity of Netflix subscription demanded and supplied is 200 million. Let's move to the next slide. Supply and demand analysis during COVID. Why did demand surge during pandemic? Lockdowns and social distancing. The pandemic restricted outdoor activities, making home entertainment a necessity. As a result, Netflix saw a massive influx of new subscribers, especially in early 2020, increase in screen time and content consumption. Binge watching culture intensified as users watched multiple episodes once again. Second, Netflix record growth in subscribers. In quarter 1 2020, Netflix added 15.8 million new subscribers, almost double the expected growth. Subscription base skyrocketed globally, especially in regions like Asia Pacific and Latin America. Netflix became a go-to platform for entertainment, competing with TV, gaming, and social media. Third, global surge in streaming consumption. Streaming services as a whole saw record engagement. Netflix led the market with a dominant position. Fourth, impact on demand curve and pricing strategy. Steep rightward shift in the demand curve. Demand curve increased rapidly, shifting the curve outward. Despite the demand surge, Netflix did not immediately raise prices to maximize short-term profit. Instead, it focused on user retention to maintain long-term growth. Supply analysis during pandemic. First point, how did pandemic affect Netflix content supply? The pandemic caused severe disruptions in content production due to global lockdowns that halted filming and post-production. As a result, Netflix faced a supply shortage despite having high demand. Second, shift in supply and demand curve. Rightward shift in demand curve, more people subscribe to Netflix, increasing the quantity demanded at a price level. Leftward shift in supply curve due to content production delays, Netflix had fewer shows and movies to release. The intersection of the new demand and the supply curve represents a new equilibrium where the higher demand meet the lower supply, creates pressure on Netflix content library. Third, how did Netflix adapt to supply shortage? Despite production delays, Netflix used several strategies to maintain content availability, increased international content releases, leveraged pre-produced content, documentaries, and limited productions. Both impact on subscription prices and user retention. No immediate price hikes. This helps retain users and maintain long-term growth. Churn prevention strategy with limited new content. Netflix focused on keeping users engaged with its existing library. Adoption of tiered pricing. Impact on equilibrium price and quantity during pandemic. First, how did pandemic impact Netflix equilibrium? Before pandemic, demand and supply were balanced, keeping prices stable. But during the pandemic, demand increased sharply as more people subscribed to Netflix. Supply decreased due to production delays, limiting the new content. This created a supply demand imbalance, shifting the equilibrium price and quantity. Second, increased price sensitivity in certain regions. In emerging markets, many users subscribe at lower tier plans. Economic uncertainty led to greater sensitivity to price change in regions like India, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. Third, Netflix decision keep price stable. Despite demand exceeding supply, Netflix did not immediately increase price. Why? Long-term growth strategy, competition concentration, and retention focus. Fourth, regional pricing adjustment and new equilibrium. In mature markets, US, Europe, price demand steady to retain loyalty. In emerging markets, Indonesia, India, and Brazil, Netflix introduced cheaper plans to maintain equilibrium. So now the graph titled as Netflix and demand curves, Netflix supply and demand curve illustrates the relationship between the supply and demand curve for Netflix subscription during the pandemic. So D1, the blue demand curve, that's the demand curve. The blue curve shows how the quantity of Netflix subscription demanded change with price. As price decreases, more people are willing to subscribe, reflecting typical consumer behavior. Supply curve, the red curve represents the quantity of subscriptions Netflix can supply at different price points. Higher prices incentivize Netflix to offer more subscriptions. Equilibrium point, the intersection of the two curves occurs at a price of $12.75 at the quantity of 225 million subscription. This point indicates the market balance where the number of subscription demanded equals the number of supplied. Now let's move to the next slide. So now let's discuss supply and demand analysis of Netflix post-COVID time period. Demand analysis post-pandemic. First point, post-pandemic demand trends, a shift from boom to stability. As the restriction lifted, streaming demand normalized, people returned to work, school, and social activities, leading to reduced screen time. The demand curve stabilized with slower growth compared to pandemic era. Second, subscription fatigue and market saturation. Consumer burnout with multiple streaming services such as Disney Plus, HBO Max, Apple TV Plus, consumers become selective. Some users cancel subscription or switch between platforms based on new content. High market penetration in key region areas. Third, the rise of ad-supported and tiered pricing models. To counter slowing demand, Netflix introduced ad-supported plans, cheaper ad-inclusive option to attract cost-conscious users, tiered pricing, mobile-only plans in emerging markets. Fourth, changing consumer expectations, more selective demand viewers now accept. So, what Netflix did is focus on higher quality, diverse content, such as strong storytelling, top tier productions, uh, localized and international content such as K dramas, anime, Bollywood, more value for money, bundles, such as bundles, live sports, interactive content, expanding content libraries in regional languages. Uh, Supply analysis post pandemic. Content production resumed after pandemic delays. Studios and production teams returned to full capacity, allowing a rightward shift in supply. Delayed projects were completed, filling content gaps. Second, Netflix focus on original content and quality control. Shift from quantity to quality. With increased competition, Netflix prioritized premium content over mass production. Viewers become picky, leading Netflix to focus on storytelling and high quality production. Third, international and regional content expansion. Netflix increased supply of non-English content to attract a global audience. Why? Because US and European markets become saturated, international content helped expand reach. Local language films and series performed well worldwide. Fourth, new monetization and business strategies. To balance increasing content costs, Netflix introduced ad-supported subscription plans and password sharing crackdowns. Fifth, impact on AI and technological innovation and supply. AI-driven content recommendations improved user engagement, interactive content and gaming integrated, expanded Netflix offering. Equilibrium price and quantity post-pandemic. First point, post-pandemic demand and supply stabilization. Demand stabilized, supply increased. This created a new equilibrium where Netflix had more content, but demand was no longer growing rapidly. Second shift in equilibrium, more supply, stable demand. Rightward shift in supply curve, more content available post-COVID. Flattened demand curve, subscription growth slowed, especially in saturated markets. The result, stable prices with some market-specific adjustment instead of major price hikes. Third, how did Netflix adjust pricing to maintain equilibrium? First, ad-supported plans, plan price hikes, mobile only and region plans, lower cost subscription launched in India, Indonesia, and Latin America to sustain growth. Fourth, password share crackdown. Before, many users shared accounts, reducing paid subscriptions. After, Netflix blocked free password sharing, requiring additional fees for extra users. The graph represents Netflix supply and demand curve post-pandemic. The demand curve in blue slope downward, indicating that as Netflix subscription price drops, more consumers are willing to subscribe. Supply curve is red slope upward, showing that Netflix is willing to offer more subscription at higher prices. The equilibrium point at 225 million subscriptions and 12.75 represents the balance where supply meets demand. Post-pandemic, Netflix demand may have shifted due to factors like increased competition from other streaming services, changing consumer preferences, and economic conditions. Now, moving on to the next slide, the graph titled Netflix Supply and Demand Curves illustrates the shift in Netflix market dynamics post-pandemic. Here's a breakdown. Demand curve, The dashed blue line represents the increased demand for Netflix subscription after the pandemic. The shift reflects the sustained interest in streaming services as people adapted to new entertainment habits. Supply curve, the dashed red line shows the adjusted supply of Netflix subscriptions. This could indicate Netflix effort to expand its offering or improve accessibility to meet the growing demand. Equilibrium point E2, the new equilibrium occurs at a quantity of 325 million subscriptions and at a price of $12.5. This indicates a higher quantity of subscription at the same price compared to pre-pandemic equilibrium. The graph highlights how Netflix capitalized on the pandemic, include surge in demand and maintained its pricing strategy while increasing its subscriber base. So my part has been completed. Thank you. Moving with Pratik for the next part.
Thank you, Sonu. I'm going to explain price elasticity of demand and supply. So before the COVID-19 pandemic, Netflix price elasticity of demand and supply had distinct characteristics. First one, demand elasticity. It is price elasticity of demand. It's a measure of how sensitive the quantity demanded is to its price. Netflix had an established brand and a loyal subscriber base. This made demand relatively inelastic. Even if Netflix raised prices, most subscribers would continue their subscription. A steep demand curve represents this behavior, as changes in price led to only small change in demand, uh, as we can see in the graph. Then supply elasticity. It's a measure used in economics to show responsiveness of the quantity supplied of a good or service to a change in its price. On the supply side, Netflix could easily acquire and license content, making its supply relatively elastic. This meant that changes in cost or demand conditions could be met with quick adjustments in content availability. So the graph illustrates these points. The steep demand curve shows inelastic demand. The flatter supply curve represents elastic supply. The intersection indicates the market equilibrium before COVID. This elasticity structure positioned Netflix well for steady growth pre-pandemic. However, COVID-19 significantly altered these dynamics, which we will discuss in the next slide. So during COVID-19 pandemic, Netflix experienced significant shifts in its price elasticity of demand and supply. So let's talk about the demand elasticity. With lockdowns in place, entertainment consumption surged, leading to more elastic demand. Since people had more alternatives, free content, competitors, or pausing subscriptions, they become more price sensitive. The flatter demand curve represents this change, as price variations now influence subscriber growth more significantly. Then supply elasticity. On the supply side, Netflix faced more inelastic supply due to halted production, increased costs, and licensing constraints. Unlike before, acquiring new content or producing original series was difficult, making content supply less flexible. The steeper supply curve illustrates this limitation. So have a look at graph and we can see that a flatter demand curve means greater sensitivity to its price, which has changed. The steeper supply curve reflects constraint in content availability. The new equilibrium highlights how Netflix adapted during this period. In conclusion, COVID-19 reshaped Netflix market dynamics, increasing demand while restricting supply. These changes had lasting effects even post-pandemic. Now we have discussed about how demand and supply changed during pandemic. Let's examine what happened post-COVID as things started returning to normal. So there were key changes in elasticity. In demand elasticity after pandemic, Netflix demand became more inelastic again as people spent less time streaming and resumed normal activities. However, competition from other streaming services increased, slightly affecting demand sensitivity. As content production resumed and restrictions were lifted, supply became more elastic, which we can see in graph. It is flatter curve. More studios could produce and distribute content, increasing availability. So have a look at a graph and we can see that the demand curve is now steeper, indicating inelastic demand, meaning price changes have a smaller impact on the number of subscribers. The supply curve is flatter, representing more elastic supply. Netflix and other providers could adjust content offerings more easily in response to demand. This shift suggests that Netflix had more pricing power post COVID, but faced stronger competition in the market. So, in conclusion, overall post COVID demand became more stable, but Netflix had to adjust to a more competitive landscape. Supply elasticity increased as content production fully resumed, giving Netflix more flexibility in managing its content strategy and pricing. So the next topic, which I'm going to explain, is macroeconomic factors. Macroeconomic conditions significantly influence Netflix pricing strategies and consumer behavior. So the first one is inflation and subscription pricing. Inflation affects Netflix's operation costs, leading to potential subscription price hikes. To retain cost-conscious subscribers, Netflix has to introduce ad-supported tiers and regional pricing adjustment. Currency fluctuation further impact international revenue streams. Then we have recession and consumer spending as our next macroeconomic factor. During recession, people cut down on luxury expenses but retained affordable entertainment like Netflix. And Netflix also benefited as an alternative to cinema outings and premium TV subscription. To maintain competitive environment, Netflix offered discounted bundles, regional packing models, and flexible plans. Let's move on to the next slide. And as we can see, there is external influences, which also affects macroeconomic factors. So the first one is unemployment and streaming demand. Periods of high unemployment, like during the pandemic, saw increased streaming demand. Netflix capitalized on this trend, but struggled with converting free users to paying subscribers. Post-COVID, as employment recovered, the company had to adjust pricing models to retain subscribers. Then we have taxation and regulatory changes. Netflix offers in multiple global markets, each with its own taxation law. Governments in Europe, the European Union, India, and Latin America have imposed digital taxes, increasing operational cost. New regulation on content, advertising, and data privacy also impact Netflix growth and strategy. Netflix adapts by adjusting pricing subscription fees in specific market to compensate for these changes. So in conclusion, macroeconomic factors force Netflix to continually adapt pricing, content strategies, and regional policies to maintain growth and profitability. Thank you. Over to Kishore.
Yeah, thank you, Pratik. Thanks for your previous topic. Yeah, now I am going to explain about the fiscal policy and monetary policy, how the impacts were happening in the COVID-19. These two factors have the major role played in this Netflix industries. Okay, let's go to the topic one of the fiscal policies. Yeah, what is mean by fiscal policy? Fiscal policy is the majorly government use the taxation and spending the various direct and indirect effects in pandemics. What is pandemic means? It's a COVID-19 of three various kinds. It's a pre-pandemic, pandemic, and after pandemics. So these were also relieving programs of pandemic sites in Netflix growth industries. Okay, let's go to the stimulus checks and direct payments. In these payment methods of directly invest in the US properties of the US state government, the payment leads to increase in disposable income of many households and retail, rental, and factories or everything is included. in the home of combination of financial aid or merely free time and led to the surgical of Netflix industries. In government stimulated packages or increased home entertainment consumption like facial stimulated measures and direct payments individual loans and expand unemployment benefits. So these are all the major role of cost in this statement. There is another kind of is including a streaming services like spending on the infrastructure and digital service. Government are spending mostly infrastructure are needed for necessaries. For an example, increase in subscribers, say millions of people were confirmed to their homes. They turned to the platforms like and for an entertainment purposes. In additional purpose, the government stimulus payment helped in the individual loss of jobs. For an example, if the labor was working in some industries and they quit the job means they also affecting in this period. So in loss of jobs or facing financial difficulties also having the auto payment debits or some other mandatory processes. So in these content of homes, people were affected in huge ways also. Support for the entertainment sector. In these entertainment sectors, globally expansion of the international accesses. Many governments, especially in emerging markets, and use of physical policies to improve their digital platforms and infrastructure access. The Internet of India may be affecting also one of the huge part of and Africa also included where more people are be able to subscribe the streaming services and platforms. Beneficially, the government use the taxation and disappointing of the spending culturals of the various filmings and Netflix products. For a better, remote work is the only online learning that including directly platform methods. In this fiscal policy impact, there is a tax relief fund incentives are also added for content creation processes. Like some governments are also introduced a tax relief for the films and entertainment industries. Like that globally content strategies, it's a business analytics also included. For an example, in the Netflix honorary CEO was investing in a huge package of volume to every films to buy their films and promoting into their own website of Netflix platform. For these only kind of the subscribers needs. For an example, Canada, UK, and some other countries also with the robust tax incentives, films also TV production also they are using for their OTT platforms. Um, Pratik, please go to the second slide for monetary policy. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, monetary policy. What is mean by monetary policy? Monetary policy is the majorly role was differentiating under lower interests of capabilities. Yeah, right. Yeah. Monetary policy was changing affecting Netflix, maybe especially through interest rates and financial markets. These were the main points for monetary policies for lower interest rates and increased liquidity and increased subscription demands. For low interest rates, the low interest rates means by the access of capital like to the central banks around the world of including the US Federal Reserve Banks also European central banks slashed interest rates is near zero level to support their platforms. It will be put a financial waste 1 million US dollars to investing in some films means the interest rate will be some low. The value of ROM and ROA also included these kind of payment methods. For an example, base investment is new shows and movies, also TV operations or some other film industries or any sector of these subscription platforms also they are adding, increasing the equality. Increasing liquidity, economically activity for their money following of the peoples. So disposable incomes through the various of region and individual circumstances. For Netflix, they meet more potential wise also subscribers need. For during lockdowns also when they are more optional like going out there travels and restricted. they can't able to go some other places, and they will simply homely lockdown periods. They can't able to move outward. So that time only they increased the liquidity of the subscribers. For an example, increased investment in streamings also, like a stock market performance. In due to the low interest rates of the investors and also optimizing tech related stocks, Netflix stocks prices performed well during the pandemic, with the people turning into the entertainment at home streaming companies like Netflix, Amazon, some other Z, or any other financial environment OTTs also they are added. For an example, rise additional fronts to the equality marketing. Further fueling is an expansionary plans including international growth and more investment in high budget productions. High budget productions. Increased subscription demands. An increased subscriber demands is almost included consumer behaviors only. For an example, monetary stimulation measures like direct payments to individual and then broadcast liquidity injections into the economy and company wise also they are needed. For an example, one employee is working in Netflix means they have some huge impact for their lives. So it's everything is based on our own website of companies only. In the pandemic, they can't able to do anything from without the subscriptions. So that they need the increased subscription, they have to put a low rate of subscription fees and some other moving to the DVD or some other extra additional works and shift wise also it will be included for making streaming more accessible. So likewise, they give us some free telecasts or some other broadcast industry awareness also. The industry specific impacts on Netflix means while physical and monetary policies are provided broad support of the economy, Netflix also direct impacts and also affect the form of the pandemic impact also. For like for example, they can use the content production and delays. For an production slowdown, so while physical policies also offered support for the some industries, Netflix faced more delay in productions of the COVID-19 pandemics. Impact of films and TV set also operations in lockdowns. So travel restrictions and the health protocols also solved. So we yeah, health protocols also solved. It is a various monetary stimulus also it will be included. Foreign migrants of the schedules. However, the Netflix ability to invest in the diverse markets helped magnetic of the co- completed a content from their different regions. For an individual flies of the programmings, tax incentives also it will be benefit for their content. As an additional, as mentioned earlier, some governments offered tax incentives benefits, some creative includings. For in an international productions also, it will be pandemic related descriptions. Netflix was able to use physical policies supports also shift. Some of the shift driver views also between preference, like this increased demand of the streaming and the content strategy of adjustment. These both of the pandemic related saw significant uptick in demand from the home entertainments, which Netflix capabilities on the with the people staying at home. Netflix subscribers growth surrounded the people's flock to the platform for wise movies and documentaries. For example, geographic explanations also it will be global growth. A government implemented more policies as it increases the access, especially in the emerging markets. Netflix benefits by further penetrations in internationals and markets increases broadcast access combined with the physical measures supporting digital platforms, and though also the government uses additional tax benefits also Southeast Asia side also, where the new subscribers were a key revenue growth for drivers during the pandemics. For then in these both conclusions was then physical and policy is ultimately why the pandemic posed challenges like the production also Netflix strategic use of these policies helped in not only weather storms but also expandability global search and will be solidity it is a position dominating players in the entertainment industry. And additionally, monetary policy refers to the action taken by the national and central of the banks, like the Federal Reserve Bank in the USA, also to manage the money supply in the interest rates. So it caused for the Netflix negative to challenge the economic landscape to macroeconomics goals of the price stability, fully employed and stable economic growth. Yeah, this is the fiscal and monetary of policies explanations of this. Now I give the second topic from the international issues to Anish.
Thank you, Kishore. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. Today, I will talk about Netflix and its journey all around the world. Netflix is a global streaming platform available in over 190 countries, but in each country, it faces different rules, challenges, and competition. My presentation will focus on before the pandemic, during pandemic, after pandemic, and finally, future outlook. Let's begin. Before the pandemic. Before COVID-19, Netflix was growing fast worldwide. However, it faced many barriers and challenges. First one, entering new markets and censorship. Netflix wanted to enter China, the world's biggest streaming market, but China had strict rules on content. So Netflix could not launch there. Instead, Netflix partnered with iQIYI, a Chinese streaming service, but this deal did not work well. So Netflix had to stop its efforts in China. Other countries like Saudi Arabia, India, and Turkey asked Netflix to remove or change some content because of their local laws. Secondly, strong competition. Netflix was not the only streaming platform. New competitors like Disney Plus and Apple TV launched in 2019. Local streaming services like Hotstar in India and Tencent Videos in uh, China were already very popular. To compete with, Netflix had to spend more money to make local content in different languages. Third one, high prices and internet problems. Netflix was more expensive than local services in some countries. Also, low or expensive internet made it hard for some people to stream Netflix. These challenges limited Netflix growth in some regions. Now, during the pandemic, when COVID-19 started, people had to stay at home. More people subscribed to Netflix because they needed entertainment. This led to a huge increase in Netflix subscribers, but at the same time, Netflix faced new problems. Firstly, show delays and filming problems. COVID-19 lockdown stopped filming for many shows and movies. Popular shows like Stranger Things and Witcher were delayed. Even though more people watched Netflix, there were fewer new shows to release. Secondly, government rules and restrictions. In Europe, government asked Netflix to lower video quality to reduce internet traffic. This was because more people were online and government wanted to prevent internet shutdown. In Russia, new content rules were introduced, which limited what Netflix could show in the country. And third one, new taxes and growing competition. Netflix got millions of subscribers in countries like India, Latin America, Europe, and Africa. But at the same time, some government introduced detailed taxes on streaming service. Countries like India, Indonesia, and South Korea started taxing, taxing digital services, making Netflix more expensive to operate. Meanwhile, competitors like Disney Plus and Amazon Prime Video grew fast and took some Netflix market share. After the pandemic. After the pandemic, Netflix faced new challenges and opportunities. Primarily, fewer, fewer new subscribers and economic problems. After the lockdown ended, people went back to work and school. This means fewer people subscribe to Netflix. At the same time, problems like inflation made people spend less money on entertainment. Some people canceled their Netflix subscription to save money. Secondly, ending password sharing. In 2023, Netflix stopped password sharing in many countries. Before, before many people shared accounts with family and friends. Now, users had to pay extra to share their account. Some people canceled Netflix, but others decided to pay for extra users. Uh, Third one, Russia-Ukraine war impact. In 2022, Netflix stopped working in Russia because of the war in Ukraine. This forced Netflix to lose over 1 million subscribers from Russia. Fourth one, investing in local content. Netflix started spending more money on local shows and movies. For example, Netflix invested 1 billion in Mexico to create new content for Latin America. Shows like Squid Game, Money Heist become huge global hits. This proved that local content can be successful worldwide. Fifth one, looking at the new market. Netflix now considering live sports streaming like NFL Sunday League. This could help Netflix attract sports fans and bring more subscribers. Let's go to future outlook. Now let's talk about Netflix future plan. Firstly, more local languages. Netflix want to add more languages for different countries. For example, in Spain, Netflix could add languages like Catalan and Basque. This will help more people enjoy Netflix in their own language. Fixing internet problems. In some countries, slow or expensive internet makes it difficult to watch Netflix. Netflix may work with internet providers to help people stream more easily. Third one, expanding content types. Netflix is testing live sports streaming and other new types of content. This could bring more users in the future. Finally, summary and the conclusion. Netflix changed during the pandemic. Before COVID-19, it grew steadily, it invested in content and kept prices stable. During the pandemic, demand had increased due to the lockdown, production delays slowed content, but Netflix gained many new subscribers. After the pandemic, demand dropped, competition from Disney Plus, HBO Max, and Amazon Prime increased. Costs went up, costs went up, and consumer habits changed. Netflix adjusted its pricing and content. Stimulus programs and low internet rates helped Netflix grow, but new taxes and global events created challenges. Netflix now focuses on local content, new markets, and live sports to stay strong. Thank you.